Uh, we're calling to order our meeting of Wednesday, January 11th. Let's take roll call, Mr. Rocha, and then I'll have an announcement for the public. You're muted, Mr. Rocha.
Give me one moment. The YouTube video started playing. Member Cuniff? Member Kelly?
Present.
Member Caffrey?
Here.
Member Selvin?
Here.
And Chair Marks.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. And this is to advise anyone who is watching the stream on GovTV or YouTube that we were delayed in starting our meeting because the Zoom link that we were planning to use did not work. If there is a member of the public who wishes to join the Zoom meeting, we don't have comment noticed, but if there was a reason why a member of the public wanted to join the Zoom meeting and try to engage in a two-way conversation with myself or staff, the meeting ID is available in the comments or the description of this meeting. And I'll also read it out now, 829-412-8710. And that would allow you with Zoom to connect to our teleconference. And I'll read that one more time, 829-412-87810. With that, we'll move on to the next item of the agenda, which is review and approval of today's agenda. I would note that as a technical matter, it includes two former members listed, Mr. Colley and Mr. Martinez, both of whom we appreciate their service. They had to leave the board for various reasons. But with that deviation explained, is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
I so move to adopt the agenda.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Can you call the roll, please, Mr. Rocha? We'll take a vote by roll.
Member Caffrey?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Selvin?
Yes.
Chair Marks?
Yes.
You have a due pass.
Thank you. Our next item would be review and approval of the minutes from April 22nd, 2025. Does anyone need any more time to take a look at that? If not, is there a motion?
I move to adopt the minutes as presented.
Thank you, Ms. Caffrey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Selvin. Mr. Rocher, please take a roll call vote.
Member Caffrey?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Selvin?
Yes.
Chair Marks?
Yes.
You have a due pass.
Okay. And next we have a presentation from staff on the Office of Internal Audit process for the 2025 election, which I believe will be an update on where things stand.
That Chair Marks will be coming from Vanessa Miski, who is also with the Office of Internal Audit, and Marisa Vargas as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Give me 1 second so I can share my screen. Crystal, may I trouble you to allow that on the back end?
Did that work?
Let's Test it out. Looks promising. Could you folks see a PDF?
Now we do.
Yes.
Yes.
Let me just move over some technical stuff on the back end. And you still can see it okay?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just multiple monitors. So. Okay. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. So similar to our last meeting, we went ahead and put together a very high-level overview summary of the in-progress QC examination. As you folks know, the mayoral period runs from April 19th through June 21st. So the table that you're currently looking at reflects all traction and all concrete data for the past 5 weeks. And during this time, 7 of the 12 candidates were pursuing public financing, and our office was able to verify a total of 296 QCs through the efforts of 853 attempts. We also came across 7 red flags, which were indeed, of course, transferred over to the Office of the City Clerk for further examination. And just an example of a red flag, it would be an instance where a contributor appeared to have out-of-date address records. None were of a monetary concern. As for week 6, where we currently are, those results are currently being vetted, and our office will share that information with Ethan's team in the next 1 to 2 business days. So, Mr. Chair, yes, indeed, true to that, very high level. Do you folks have any questions for us at this time?
Members, are there questions for Ms. Meske?
I guess I have one. If a candidate was pursuing public financing and then made the decision to forego public financing, does your office stop everything, or does it continue to check the prior activity?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that question. Yes, so our results for week 6 will ensure to include the candidates that did shift from from public to private, which were the vast majority. At this time, we only have 2 remaining that are pursuing.
Okay.
And so to answer your question, we would not go back and perform examinations on those that did shift their type of financing. We would basically cut operations there for those individuals.
Mr. Chair, did I understand correctly that only 2 are pursuing public financing at this time?
Ms. Meske, can you respond to that and identify the 2 that are remaining in the running for that?
Yes, of course, Mr. Chair. To our understanding, we just have candidate Keller and candidate Herrick. And I just want to confirm that that's accurate on Cristobal's end, just because we speak on the data weekly.
Yes, Chair Marks, that's correct. We have just the 2 candidates remaining for public financing.
Thank you. Good question, Mr. Kelly. Any other questions from the board? Well, with that, thank you, Ms. Meske, for you and your staff's work. And we'll look forward to hearing from you at each meeting until we've gone through the public financing cycle for the council candidates as well.
Chair Marks, if I may, just again want to extend our gratitude towards the Office of Internal Audit. I recently had the pleasure of riding along with them last week, and I am just amazed of the professionality of the office and the thoroughness. And so just want to say thank you while we have them here.
Thanks for those remarks.
And Chair, I know we have the auditor, Marisa Vargas on, and I didn't know if she had any other comments on that as well.
I don't have any further comments, but I appreciate the feedback and thank you, Cristobal, for taking the time to ride along with the team. We appreciate the feedback that you gave to us regarding what you encountered.
Wonderful. Well, and let's see. I think with that, we'll move on to item 5 on our agenda, which is discussion and potential action on an advisory opinion request 022025. And I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Jackson to explain or summarize what the advisory opinion request was and his legal opinion that he would propose that we adopt.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the disclaimer rules in the clerk's rules for the election code and for the open and ethical election code require disclaimers on campaign materials. Now, for independent expenditures, coordinated expenditures, and measure finance committees, there are additional requirements on the disclaimer. Specifically, the independent expenditure, coordinated expenditure, or measure finance committee has to disclose the top 5 donors to the party that's issuing those campaign materials. And in addition to that, they've got to disclose secondary donors as follows, and that's that if any of the top 5 donors to the entity that's issuing the campaign materials is also a committee, organization, or other entity, then the disclaimer has to include the top 2 donors to that entity. And then there is if those top 5 change, then the subsequent materials need to reflect that. And there's an exception for short audio or video advertisements of 30 seconds or less that are not required to include the secondary donors. So Eli Lee, on behalf of Measure Finance Committee, ABQ for All, asked for an advisory opinion on 3 questions. And I'm just going to go ahead and read those questions as they were proposed. Under the secondary donor requirement, how is secondary donor defined? For example, is a member of a labor union who provides $1,000 or more in membership dues a secondary donor? Is a customer of a private company who purchases a good or service for $1,000 or more a secondary donor? Is a donor who provides non-earmarked general operating support to a 501c4 nonprofit organization of $1,000 or more a secondary donor? The second question, related, in the instance where a labor union, private company, or a 501c4 organization is one of our top 5 donors, has sources of income that exceed $1,000, but has not had any income of $1,000 or more earmarked for the upcoming municipal election, would the secondary donor requirement apply to these entities at all? And then the third question is, are there any entities outside of individual donors that fall outside of the broad definition of a committee, organization, or other entity, and would therefore be exempt from the secondary donor disclaimer requirement? Now, there was also a 4th question proposed. The clerk determined that that question did not pass initial review for the type of question that would be appropriate for an advisory opinion, and Mr. Lee declined to reformulate the question. So that question is not addressed in the proposed advisory opinion. What the proposed advisory opinion would say in answer to those questions is that, first, secondary donor is intended to apply broadly, consistent with the ordinary usage of both words, secondary and donor. And the word secondary simply means somebody that contributes to a committee, organization, or other entity that is in turn one of the top 5 aggregate donors to the entity that's issuing the campaign materials within the 12 months preceding the dissemination of those materials. And donor is a donor. It's one who gives something. And then for the second question, if one or more of the top 5 donors to the entity issuing the materials has received one or more donations from a single person, then the requirement applies. The rule doesn't say anything about earmarking. It doesn't require that a secondary donor intend for those funds to be applied to campaign purposes. It is simply tied to the fact that the primary donor is in turn donating to the Measure Finance Committee. And then for question 3, to the extent that it's intended to seek guidance on whether a particularly secondary donor should be disclosed, the answer is no, there are not entity types that are exempt from the broad language of the disclaimer rule. And that is intentionally so to avoid attempts to circumvent the disclosure requirements in the disclaimer rule. So that's the 30,000-foot view. I probably want to stop here and see if there are any questions just at the summary level before delving into anything in more detail.
Well, I have some questions, but I want to see where you go next, Mr. Jackson. And
Okay. So the real meat of this is the construction of the secondary donor. And that requirement is intended to provide the electorate with information as to where political campaign money comes from and how it is spent. Those requirements, they deter corruption, avoid the appearance of corruption by exposing large contributions and expenditures to the light of publicity. And they are also an essential means of gathering the data necessary to determine whether the rule is being complied with. And those are all interests that have been recognized by the United States Supreme Court as significant governmental interests. That goes back to the Buckley many years ago. The secondary donor disclosure requirement, it further these interests by providing to the electorate the information about who's funding the Measure Finance Committee directly or indirectly. And it also assists the city, specifically the city clerk, in confirming that independent expenditures and coordinated expenditures are being correctly disclosed. And it's, as required by the Constitution, the requirement it's narrowly tailored. It doesn't require disclosure of all secondary donors. It's only the top 2 donors, and only if the top 2 donors have given $1,000 or more to one of the top 5 donors to the entity that's issuing the materials. And here, secondary it just means indirect. It's the rule is designed to avoid hiding by funneling the campaign money for independent expenditures, coordinated expenditures, and Measure Finance Committees. The rule does not expressly talk about a tertiary donor. That would be somebody who would donate to a secondary donor. But the governing law would be to look at the form, the substance rather than the form of the transaction. And I would anticipate that the board would not look kindly upon clever attempts to circumvent the disclaimer requirements. And the donor is, again, it's a donor. It's, if you donate to charity, you're giving something to the charity and without expectation of fair market return. And that ends up being a fairly fact-specific determination in any given context. But with respect to the hypotheticals that were posed by the requester, the union member, well, okay, so they provided more than $1,000 in membership dues. Is that in excess of what they would normally provide? What do they get in return for paying those membership dues? What are the benefits of membership in the union? And then with respect to a customer of a private company, just to provide a concrete example, if somebody goes and buys a car at sticker price, that person's not going to be a donor because that's an arm's length fair market value transaction. But if they just walked into the dealership and wrote a check for $50,000 and then walked out again, then yeah, they'd be a secondary donor to the dealership. And then I've used a peanut example. I don't know why I chose peanuts, other than it was a commodity that I quickly found a sort of a nice round price for about 25 cents a pound. You know, if you buy one peanut for $1,000, then yeah, you're going to be a donor. But if you buy 2 tons of peanuts, then no, because again, that's market value. A donor to a 501c4 would be considered a donor because they don't receive a fair market value return. And that's going to be irrespective of whether the donation was earmarked for the political purposes or for general operational support. With respect to the second question, the stated purpose of the donations is not relevant. There are 2 reasons for that. One is that that's simply not in the rule. The rule just requires it's a dollar amount trigger. It's not an earmarking trigger, and that is for 2 reasons. One is that if the funds are not earmarked, right, if they're just provided without condition, then of course they could be used for the campaign purposes, which means that their disclosure helps further the interests that were identified earlier. And even if the funds were earmarked for some other purpose, well, that then frees up funds that would otherwise be used for those purposes to be used for campaign materials. And then with respect to the third question, you know, the other entity language in the rule is that's just very broad, and that's going to be construed to apply to corporations, limited liability companies, unincorporated associations, trusts, etc. It is intended to encompass the universe of non-natural persons. And of course, as to individual donors, you know, you don't have the secondary donor because, you know, straw donors are not permitted. So that is the sum of the opinion. There is a note in the final paragraph that this is only offered to the extent that the requester is seeking advice on what needs to be in the disclaimers, to the extent that the requester is seeking advice about the conduct of its donors so that it can, you know, advise potential donors or secondary donors. That goes beyond the scope of what the appropriate matter for an advisory opinion from the board would be, which is only to concern conduct in which the requester intends to engage or regarding prospective matters. And with that, I will certainly take any questions that the members may have.
Anything from the members?
No, I think it was clear, especially so the question being with the hypothetical about union membership, addressing the donor part of secondary donor. What is a donor as it relates to a kind of a dues membership thing, and giving them a good context for what is and what is not a donation.
You wanting Mr. Jackson to respond to that, or is that just more you?
That's just a comment, sorry.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I took it as, but I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
The union context seems a little more complex than the commercial context. I think it's, you know, abundantly clear that, as Mr. Jackson points out, that if you're a business and you're donating to this Measure Finance Committee, and your money comes from money you earned in the ordinary course of your business, whether it's selling peanuts or cars, your customers are not secondary donors. And I think Mr. Jackson's opinion makes clear that if somebody tries to game it with a bogus transaction, that doesn't solve the problem. At that point, they're a secondary donor. But if it's a normal transaction in the ordinary course of a business, and you're getting peanuts or a car for it, you're not a donor. On the union side, I, I think his opinion satisfactory. There's a question in my mind whether you can actually use union dues for political purposes. I'm, prior to that Citizens United thing, you couldn't. Maybe, I don't know if you can anymore, but it used to be union dues and corporate union dues and corporation money you couldn't use, and all the unions had their own separate political committees, and people gave voluntary donations to that, and those are obviously donations, not dues. So I think there's a little complexity there, but I think dues, if the dues, you're getting something for it, you're getting representation. And again, I don't think you're a donor. And I think Mr. Jackson's opinion follows with that. So that would be my, I got a comment here from Mr. Watson. The questions were kind of theoretical, and I think Mr. Jackson has kind of responded in a broad way, which is because the questions were broad, and then the two specific hypotheticals given, he's responded to. Do we have any questions for Mr. Jackson or more comments from the members? Is there anyone who disagrees with Mr. Jackson's opinion or would like him to clarify something or expound on something? I'm not hearing it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, just so that anybody who is watching is informed, as before, and as almost always seems to happen, as I was referring to the document in presenting to you, I've noticed a couple of typographical errors. There was a give for a 5, a borad that should have been board. And then in one of the quotations from Buckley, I omitted the phrase "comes from" in the phrase as to where political campaign money comes from and how it's
Okay.
And I'll after assuming that the opinion is otherwise satisfactory for the board, I'll recirculate with those changes made.
I think that tees things up. Is there a motion? The chair would entertain a motion to adopt the recommended opinion on the request 022025 with the corrections of the production errors that Mr. Jackson just described.
Okay, I will move to adopt advisory opinion 02-2025 with the minor typographic corrections that were identified by Mr. Jackson.
Okay. Moved by Member Caffrey. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Member Kelly. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Rocha, can you take a roll call vote on the motion to adopt the recommended opinion?
Member Caffrey,
Yes.
Member Kelly,
Yes.
Member Selden,
Yes.
Chair Marks.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Jackson, for your work putting this together and for your presentation today.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. With that, on item 6 would be Mr. Watson received a complaint which he deemed did not fall within, that was directed to our board, but which Mr. Watson deemed did not fall within our jurisdiction, and he so informed the complainant. But I've asked him to inform the members as to what the complaint alleged and Mr. Watson's reasons for deeming it outside our jurisdiction, just in case any of the members had a different take on it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So on Thursday, May 29th, an individual named Lisa Christofferson filed a complaint with the clerk's office against candidate Tim Keller, who is a candidate for the office of the mayor of Albuquerque. The rules of the Board of Ethics, as well as the charter itself, have a pre-complaint diversion process in Section 5, which requires the clerk's office to review all complaints for essentially facial sufficiency prior to sending them to the board. I reviewed the complaint pursuant to the criteria outlined in that section. The complaint alleged that, sorry, let me reverse this. The rules of the board require that complainants describe in detail the alleged violation, including the section or parts of the codes or rules of the board that the complainant believes in good faith have been violated. The complaint did not identify any violations of the Code of Ethics, the Election Code, or the board's rules. Instead, it alleged a violation of a city administrative instruction. The city's administrative instructions are essentially rules for employees, or procedures in many cases for how city employees should handle various issues. The particular administrative instruction in this case relates to political activity. And while it is a subject matter which is related to the board's jurisdiction, the alleged violations were not violations of this board's rules. As a result, the specific conduct which was alleged to violate the administrative instructions was city employees were alleged to be, it was alleged that they were going to be conducting a fundraiser for candidate Tim Keller, I believe one evening during the week. So I reviewed the complaint against the rules, and because it did not identify a violation of the code, the election code, or the board's rules, I rejected it. The complainant can appeal a rejection under the charter and the rules, and the time for that appeal has now expired.
Are there? So just to summarize, the complaint alleged that city employees were assisting Mayor Keller's reelection campaign by hosting fundraisers in their home or publicizing fundraisers. There's something that binds or may bind city employees that tells them that they shouldn't be engaging in political activities for elected city officials.
Well, the provision says they're not supposed to hold funds for elected officials, and which I assume means they can't serve. The provision cited essentially said they can't hold funds for a candidate, which I assume mean they can't serve as like a treasurer for a campaign. It also says they can't accept gifts from a candidate. I can pull up the specific sections that it said were violated if the board is interested. Hold on.
Let's do that, since
it's an interesting issue, but the way you get around that is just you have a fundraiser and point people to the donation link to donate directly to the campaign. If you're never serving as an intermediary or holding funds, I mean, just off the cuff, it's a very sort of esoteric AI.
So the specific administrative instruction is administrative instruction 7-19. It basically outlines many activities that city employees are allowed to do, and then it outlines some activities that they are not allowed to do. I did not review the merits of this, as that ultimately would have been the board's purview if this ever went to the board. I will say that the AI does allow employees to make voluntary contributions to candidates. That wasn't cited, but and then subsection B, though, when it details what employees are not allowed to do, it says employees may not receive, disburse, or account for assessments, contributions, or other funds for any candidate. And 4, receive or offer to receive any money, gratuity, or benefit from any candidate.
So an employee could host a fundraiser for a candidate, as long as there was somebody there from the campaign who actually received the money and the employee never touched it, right?
Mr. Chair, arguably, and again, I didn't really think a lot about the merits. There were another sort of strange issue around this complaint was that it was prospective, which I'd never seen before. I mean, it was about a fundraiser which had not occurred.
Okay, but
for the jurisdiction of this board, it sounds like this is a question of the conduct of a city employee rather than the conduct of a campaign or a candidate.
Well,
Sure.
I guess for my review, Mr. Chair and Member Caffrey, the complaint did not allege a violation of the charter, the code of ethics, or the clerk's rules and regs for the election. And so it did not make allegations, and it did not identify any specific provisions of those laws that were violated. That was my analysis.
that clearly, that's a first order question. There's some obligation on the complainant to identify something in the election code or the board's rules, and they just left that out. I mean, and what they cited to instead was something outside our jurisdiction. So no question there, but the issue is, could this come back to us? And if they wrote it differently, maybe, but it doesn't sound like, well, I just thought we should air it to see, even though we're not discussing the merits, just so we had an idea of what it was. If there's nothing further on the complaint, that was at this point, did you say that the period for appeal has run or is still running?
I'm nearly positive it has. I would need to double check that, but I believe the appeal deadline is expired.
But nothing stops the complainant from submitting another complaint on the same facts and trying to cite to something if there was something. It's before we go to adjournment, a couple of housekeeping items. As I mentioned at the start, we unfortunately lost 2 members who had been productive members of our board over the past couple of years. I believe that these were council appointed members, and so there's been some efforts made to recruit replacements, and maybe either Mr. Watson or Mr. Rocha could update us on whether we're likely to have some new colleagues soon.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can update the board on that. My understanding is that the council has 3 potential members that we'll be discussing at the council meeting on Monday, the 16th, if I'm correct on that date. And so their resumes have been posted on our website now for several weeks, and I believe council will be voting on those, or they are on the agenda for the council to review on the 16th.
And then, thank you. And then we'll be convening on the 9th of July. And if any of those persons are placed on the board, they would be joining us for that meeting, correct?
I believe so.
Okay. And I mentioned this to Mr. Rocha. It would be my preference that we have an in-person meeting for July 9th. It's just a preference, and if that's not a good date for any of the members, we could discuss some alternatives. I mean, it would be, I think we'd allow people to participate members to participate by Zoom. But I thought since it's been a while since we convened in person, it would just be good for us to get together in person, and particularly when we have the new people joining us. So it would be my proposal, unless there's, it's not a strong proposal, but it'd be my proposal that we convene on the 9th in person. And I think it was suggested by staff that we convene in the Pyramid Building. They have a hearing room. And we might like it better than the city council chambers. We might not, but it would give us a chance to see what that is like, so that if we do have to do a hearing, we'd have some experience with that room, and we could decide if we want to do our hearings in that room versus doing them in this council chambers. So that would be the chair's proposal, and I'd appreciate any feedback from the members.
Chair Marks, just a quick little update. So the basement hearing room here in Plaza del Sol is available, but it's available from 1 to 2. There's a meeting right at 2. We could do, if you want to have a little bit longer, not sure what the length or topics at that meeting will be, we could potentially meet starting at 12.
This is on Wednesday, July 9th. Am I correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
I will. I would say let's shoot for 1, and I will be meeting with Mr. Rocha and Mr. Watson a week before, and if it looked like we had an agenda that was going to take us more than an hour, we'll do something different, either do in person at the city council chambers, start the meeting earlier, or just do a Zoom meeting. But if there's no general objection to us convening in person, that's what we'll try to do.
Mr. Chair, did I hear the chair say that the meeting would start at 1 p.m. that day?
That'd be my preference, that we not change our start time.
Thank you.
Yes, with that, not hearing any objections, the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn today.
Mr. Chair, this is Mr. Kelly. I'll so move.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ms. Caffrey. And Mr. Rocha, please take a roll call vote.
Member Caffrey?
Yes.
Member Kelly?
Yes.
Member Selden?
Yes.
And Chair Marks?
Yes. And in conclusion, I want to thank staff for everything they do, but I also want to thank the members. We let you know that we were light on members and that quorum was going to be an issue, and everybody made an effort and showed up and allowed us to get done some business that we're responsible for with this advisory opinion. So I thank all the members and look forward to seeing you in a month.